Love is an enigma. It is the force that moves mountains, yet it is invisible. It is the fire that warms the soul, yet it cannot be touched. And sometimes, just sometimes, love does not come wrapped in grand gestures or poetic words. Sometimes, love chooses silence. Love is not always loud. It does not always arrive with grand gestures, poetic words, or constant reassurances. Sometimes, love moves in silence, operating in ways that are not immediately understood. When a man truly cares for you, he may not always express it in the way you expect. He may not flood your phone with messages, shower you with attention, or make his presence known every moment of the day. And yet, in his quietness, in his distance, love may still be present, stronger than words could ever convey. From an early age, we are taught that love should be obvious, that it should be clear and easy to recognize. Movies, books, and stories tell us that love is about pursuit, about two people who cannot bear to be apart. But real love, mature love, does not always follow the script we have in our minds. Sometimes, the deepest emotions do not come with loud declarations, but with quiet actions, hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be understood. Men, in particular, have been raised in a world that often discourages them from expressing deep emotions freely. Many have been conditioned to equate love with strength and to equate strength with silence. Love, in its purest form, can be terrifying because it is the one force that makes a man vulnerable. To truly love someone is to expose the deepest parts of oneself, the fears, the insecurities, the unspoken doubts, and not every man is ready for that exposure. This is why love is not always loud. A man who truly loves you may not know how to articulate it. He may not have the words to express what he feels, and instead of speaking, he may choose silence. Instead of chasing, he may choose distance. Not because he does not care, but because he cares more deeply than he knows how to express. There are moments when love is about restraint rather than pursuit. A man may step back, not because he is indifferent, but because he respects the space between you. Love that is real does not need to be forced. It does not need to be proven in every waking moment. True love trusts that it will still exist even in moments of stillness, even when words are left unsaid. Silence, when coming from a place of love, is not rejection. It is not neglect. It is not abandonment. It is often a reflection of inner conflict, a sign that the emotions are too deep to be casually expressed. A man who loves you may struggle with how to show it, fearing that if he does, he will expose too much of himself. He may need time to understand what he is feeling before he can share it with you. And so he ignores, not out of malice, not out of disinterest, but because love is a force he is still learning to navigate. He may need to sit with his emotions, to make sense of what they mean, before he can face you with the truth of his heart. And this perhaps is the greatest test, not for him, but for you. Can you recognize love, even when it is silent? Can you trust in the connection, even when it is not constantly reaffirmed? Love is not proven by how often someone speaks, but by how deeply they feel. It is not about constant validation, but about an unshakable presence that exists even in absence. If a man truly loves you, he will not stay away forever. But in the moments he does, in the moments he is quiet, understand that love does not always need to be loud to be real. It can exist in the pauses, in the stillness, in the spaces between words. It can be felt in the quiet patience of waiting, in the unspoken certainty that what is meant to be will always find its way back. Love, at its core, is not measured by how much noise it makes. It is measured by how deeply it lingers, even when no words are spoken. Men process emotions differently. This simple truth is often misunderstood, leading to confusion, frustration, and even heartbreak. Society has long shaped men to be providers, protectors, and symbols of strength. From a young age, many are taught that emotions should be controlled, contained, or even ignored. They are rarely encouraged to speak about their feelings openly, and instead they learn to process emotions in silence. This conditioning does not mean they do not feel deeply. It means they express it in ways that might not always be obvious. When a man falls in love, he experiences emotions that challenge his sense of stability. Love is unpredictable. It is intense. It is something that cannot be calculated or controlled. And for many men, this lack of control is unsettling. While a woman might seek comfort in sharing her feelings, a man often does the opposite. He withdraws, he pulls away, not because he doesn't care, but because he is trying to understand what he is feeling. This withdrawal is not a rejection, though it may feel like one. It is an internal process, a moment of reflection. A man may need time to sit with his emotions, to make sense of them before he can fully express them. This is why some men seem distant when they care the most. They are not ignoring you to hurt you. They are processing emotions in a way that feels natural to them. In times of stress or uncertainty, a woman might seek connection, talking through her thoughts and emotions. She might reach for comfort, for reassurance, for closeness. But a man, even when deeply in love, may instinctively do the opposite. He may retreat into himself, preferring solitude over discussion. He may need time to sit with his emotions, to understand their weight before he can articulate them. It is not that he does not want to talk, it is that he does not yet know how. For a man, love can feel like an unfamiliar language, one that he was never taught to speak fluently. While women often communicate emotions directly, men may express love in actions rather than words. He might show his feelings by providing, by protecting, by being present in the ways he knows how. But when emotions become overwhelming, when they challenge his sense of self, he may not know how to express them in the way you expect. Instead, he pulls back, he creates distance, he ignores, not because he wants to, but because he does not know any other way to navigate the depth of his feelings. This is where patience and understanding become essential. It is easy to mistake his silence for indifference, his withdrawal for rejection, but often it is neither. It is simply a man trying to find his own way through emotions that feel bigger than him. The mistake many women make is assuming that if a man truly loved them, he would communicate in the same way they do. But love does not always work that way. Love is not about how we prefer to receive it. It is about learning to understand how it is given. Of course, there is a difference between a man who is processing his emotions and a man who is emotionally unavailable. There is a difference between temporary distance and permanent neglect. A man who truly loves you will return when he has sorted through his thoughts. He will seek you out when he has found clarity. He may not express his love in the way you imagined, but he will express it in the way he knows best. And when he does, it will be genuine. If a man is ignoring you, take a step back and ask yourself why. Is he overwhelmed? Is he struggling with emotions he does not yet know how to communicate? Or is he simply not invested in the way you deserve? The answer is important because not all silence means the same thing. Some men ignore because they are afraid of their feelings, and others ignore because they do not feel deeply enough to stay. The key is to understand the difference. If he loves you but needs space, let him have it. If his feelings are real, he will work through them and find his way back to you. But if his silence stretches into indifference, if his absence feels more like neglect than processing, then perhaps his love was never as deep as you hoped. Understanding how men process emotions can save you from unnecessary heartache. It can help you recognize when to be patient and when to walk away. Love is not always loud, and it is not always immediate. Sometimes, love is found in the quiet spaces, in the moments of distance that allow it to grow stronger. And if it is real, it will not stay silent forever. Fear of vulnerability is one of the most powerful and deeply ingrained emotions a man can experience, especially when it comes to love. Love in its truest form is raw. It is exposing. It forces a person to stand before another, stripped of their defenses, with no mask, no armor, just their heart laid bare. For many men, this is terrifying. From a young age, society conditions men to be strong, to suppress their emotions, to believe that vulnerability is weakness. They are taught that to show too much feeling is to risk losing control, that to express deep emotions is to make themselves susceptible to pain, rejection, and worst of all, dependency. So, when a man begins to fall deeply in love, when he starts to feel emotions stronger than anything he has ever known, his instinct is often not to embrace it, but to retreat. Ignoring someone he loves is not always an act of cruelty. Sometimes it is an act of self-preservation. He may not even understand why he is pulling away. All he knows is that something inside him feels exposed, unguarded, at risk. And for a man who has spent his whole life trying to maintain control, this can be an unbearable sensation. Love is a mirror. It reflects back to us not only our beauty, but also our fears, our wounds, the unresolved parts of ourselves that we have managed to bury deep within. A man who ignores you, despite loving you, may be struggling with the realization that love demands something from him that he does not yet know how to give. It demands honesty, it demands emotional depth, it demands that he face his own insecurities, and that can be overwhelming. He might fear that if he lets you in too deeply, you will see the flaws he tries so hard to hide. He might fear that if he allows himself to be vulnerable, he will be hurt, abandoned, or left behind. He might fear that if he surrenders fully to love, he will lose his sense of independence, his identity, his control over his own heart. And so he chooses silence over expression, distance over closeness, not because he wants to push you away, but because he is caught in a battle between what he feels and what he fears. Some men ignore the ones they love because they are afraid of commitment, not the kind of commitment that means loyalty or exclusivity, but the deeper commitment that love requires, the commitment to open their heart fully, the commitment to be seen as they truly are without pretense, the commitment to risk being hurt, knowing that love comes with no guarantees. It is easier, in their minds, to withdraw, to create space, to pretend as though their emotions do not run as deep as they do, because to admit their feelings would mean confronting the very thing they have spent a lifetime avoiding, their own vulnerability. But love, true love, is relentless. It does not allow itself to be ignored forever. A man can only run from his feelings for so long before they catch up to him. He can only suppress his emotions for so long before they demand to be acknowledged. And when that moment comes, he has two choices: continue running or stand in his truth. If he truly loves you, he will eventually realize that ignoring his feelings, ignoring you, does not make them go away. He will learn that vulnerability is not weakness, but strength, that love is not something to fear, but something to embrace, that true connection is not about maintaining control, but about surrendering to something greater than oneself. But you cannot force this realization upon him. You cannot beg him to face his emotions, nor can you convince him that love is safe. He must come to this understanding on his own, in his own time, through his own journey. And if he does, he will return, not as the man who ignored you out of fear, but as the man who is finally ready to stand beside you, unafraid. A man who truly loves you may distance himself not because he is losing interest, but because he is working on himself. Love is not just an emotion, it is a responsibility. To truly love someone means to offer them the best version of yourself, and that takes time, effort, and often solitude. When a man falls in love, he doesn't just see you, he sees the life he wants to build with you. And if he is not yet the man he wants to be, he may pull away, not because he loves you any less, but because he understands that love demands growth. He looks at himself and sees the gaps, the areas where he feels inadequate, the wounds he has yet to heal, the dreams he still needs to chase before he can stand beside you as an equal, not a burden. It is difficult to understand from the outside. You may wonder why he chooses distance when love should bring two people closer, but in his mind, he is doing what he believes is right. He does not want to offer you half of himself. He does not want to bring you into a life where he feels unprepared. So, he withdraws, not out of neglect, but out of necessity. There is a difference between a man who pulls away because he is uninterested and a man who distances himself because he is growing. The first is indifferent. He does not think about how his absence affects you. The second is deeply aware. He wrestles with the decision, knowing that stepping away might hurt, but believing that in the long run, it will make your love stronger. Growth requires space. No great transformation happens in chaos or desperation. Just as a tree needs room to stretch its roots, just as a river carves its path slowly through stone, a man who truly loves you will take the time to shape himself into someone who is worthy of your love. He will not want to be a weak foundation upon which your relationship is built. Instead, he will strive to be solid ground, a place where love can grow without fear of collapse. This space is not rejection, it is preparation. It is the fire that forges something stronger. And if his love is true, he will return, not as the man who left, but as the man who is ready. The hardest thing to do is to trust this process, to allow someone the freedom to step away without fear of losing them forever. But real love does not die in silence. It does not fade in solitude. Instead, it deepens, it clarifies, it finds its way back when the time is right. Do not chase him. Do not beg for his attention. Do not try to fill the silence with questions he is not ready to answer. Let him go and watch what he does with that freedom. If he truly loves you, he will use that time to grow, to build, to prepare. And when he returns, he will not be the same man who left. He will be better. He will be ready. He will be yours in a way he never could have been before. Silence is a strange thing. It can be comforting or unsettling, peaceful or deafening. But when it comes from someone you love, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a question without an answer. There are moments in relationships when silence is not indifference, but rather a test, not of you, but of the emotions stirring inside the other person. A man who truly loves you may, at times, pull away, not because he does not care, but because he is trying to understand what he feels. Some men do not know love until they experience its absence. They do not recognize its weight until they feel the void it leaves when they step back. This silence is not meant to punish you, nor is it meant to create distance without reason. It is a way for him to measure the depth of what he feels, to see if what he is experiencing is fleeting or something real. There is a misconception that when a man loves a woman, he should always be present, always giving, always expressing. But love does not always unfold in a predictable linear way. It is not a continuous outpouring of words and actions. Sometimes it is a wave that retreats before it crashes forward. It is in the retreat that a man often finds his truth. When he steps back, he asks himself questions he never dared to ask before. Do I miss her when she is gone? Do I crave her presence? Is this love, or is it just comfort? Is this connection something I cannot live without? A man's silence can be frustrating. It can feel like rejection. It can make you question your worth, your value, your place in his life. But before you let doubt consume you, understand that his distance may not be about you at all. Some men have never been taught to confront emotions head-on. They have been conditioned to believe that love is weakness, that attachment is vulnerability. When they realize they are falling, their first instinct is to step back and assess what is happening to them. This silence, this pause, is often where clarity is born. It is in the quiet moments that the heart speaks the loudest. If a man distances himself and feels nothing, no longing, no ache, no sense of loss, then he has his answer. He knows that what he felt was never deep enough to last. But if in that silence he finds himself drawn back to you, if he realizes that life feels empty without your presence, then he understands. This is real. This is something he cannot ignore. But this is where your role becomes important. When a man pulls away, you must not chase him. You must not run after him, demanding explanations, seeking reassurances. Because if he is testing his emotions, and you try to force an answer before he has found one, you rob him of the opportunity to discover the truth for himself. Let him feel your absence. Let him sit with his thoughts. Let him come to his own conclusion without influence. Because when he does, and if his love is real, he will not stay away. He will return, not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but out of the undeniable pull of something deeper than logic. This is why some men ignore the ones they love, not out of cruelty, not out of a lack of affection, but because they need to be sure. And sometimes the only way to be sure is to let the silence speak for itself. If he loves you, he will not be able to ignore what he feels forever. He will not be able to stay away. Because real love does not fade in absence. It grows stronger. And when he realizes this, when he understands that his heart belongs to you, he will return with certainty, not hesitation. And that kind of love, the one that has been tested in silence and still stands strong, is the love worth waiting for. Love, like fire, needs space to breathe. It cannot exist in suffocation, nor can it grow in desperation. The nature of love is paradoxical. It draws two people together, yet it demands moments of separation. It ignites passion, yet it requires patience. Many believe that love should be a constant presence, a ceaseless stream of attention, affirmation, and togetherness. But the truth is, love is just as much about space as it is about closeness. When a man truly loves you, there will be times when he pulls away. Not because he has stopped caring, not because his heart has changed, but because love, real love, demands reflection. It demands moments of distance, of silence, of solitude. It is in these moments that emotions settle, that thoughts become clear, that feelings are tested. Imagine a flame. Hold it too tightly, and it is smothered, unable to breathe. Give it too much distance, and it fades into nothing. Love operates in the same delicate balance. It requires presence, but not possession. It requires connection, but not control. When a man steps back, it is often because his heart is learning the rhythm of love. He is discovering what it means to care deeply, to desire another person not out of need, but out of choice. Some may mistake this space for rejection. They may see silence as abandonment, withdrawal as indifference. But love, true love, is not about clinging to someone for validation. It is about allowing them the freedom to return on their own. It is about trusting that what is real does not need to be forced, that what is meant to be will not require chasing. This space is not just for him, it is for you as well. It is in his absence that you come to understand your own strength. It is in the silence that you hear your own thoughts. It is in the waiting that you learn patience, resilience, and self-worth. Love is not about filling every empty moment with another person's presence. It is about knowing that even in their absence, you remain whole. A man who truly loves you will not disappear forever. His distance is not an escape, but a recalibration. It is his way of finding clarity, of understanding the depth of what he feels, and when he returns, he does so with certainty, with purpose, with the realization that love is not about fear or doubt, but about choosing every day to stay. Do not fear the space between you. Do not rush to close the gap. Trust in the quiet. Trust in the process. If it is real, if it is meant, love will find its way back. And when it does, it will be stronger, deeper, and more certain than before.